Hi everyone, it's me, Megan Hunt, back with my fourth video. In case you're new to my channel, I am a self-taught artist and aspiring illustrator. I have dreams of, freelance illustrating, and I would love to write a children's book. That's one thing that's kind of been on my bucket list recently, and I've just been kind of working on my skills. So this is kind of just documenting my journey with that. The subject of today's video is pretty relevant right now, I would say. It's October, and October, as most artists know, is a huge month for prompt lists. So the big one that everybody has probably heard of is Inktober. There's also Drawtober and Badtober, and there's all different artists and entities that have made lists, and I love I love this idea. I think it is so fun to see other artists, you know, whatever they come up with for these prompts, and seeing them just like day after day come out with these new ideas, and I love watching the process. But I have discovered, maybe the hard way, after many years of attempting to participate in Inktober or, various related prompt lists, I it is not for me. It just isn't. Um, I think for me, it sets myself up for failure because, not to say that I can't draw every day. Art takes discipline, and we need to be drawing consistently, and practicing every day. Really, it's a daily practice. If you love something and you want to be better at it, you have to practice. But with Inktober and other types of, prompt lists, it's really intended for you to be sharing. You don't have to. There's no rules. Like, you can participate and just not share. But, for me to put that much effort into it and then not share seems kind of like a waste. But at the same time, I just have never felt like I could get these prompts done efficiently enough, while also producing something that I feel is worthy of sharing. And I feel like it puts a lot of pressure on me, and I set myself up for failure. Every year, I'm like, this is the year. This is the year. I'm going to do it. I'm going to plan it all out. I'm going to get everything ready. I'm going to, grid it out on my sketchbook and, have it all divided up and have all the prompts listed out already. And that way, I can even work on them ahead of time. Yeah. Um, I got really close last year to completing every single day. This year, I did the first few and then I gave up. And I just felt so frustrated with myself. And, it was like, okay, that's yet another failure on my part. And I get down on myself. And I just realized that's not a healthy cycle to continuously try to participate in something that just clearly isn't working well for me. Um, Maybe in the future that will change. If I ever found myself in a position to be able to be a full-time artist, it might be more achievable. But I work a full-time job. So right now I have a day job, and my free time is really limited. And sometimes I don't want to spend the small amount of free time I have on a prompt that I'm not terribly excited about. I want to spend my free time on art that makes me really happy. So that's a really long-winded way of introducing this particular painting. Um, I've been feeling really down lately. I have a lot going on in my personal life. I've been struggling, to be honest. And there are certain movies that I like to watch when I'm feeling kind of down and sad, and they're comfort movies, right? Well, The Dark Crystal is definitely one of my comfort movies. And so I turned on The Dark Crystal and I listened to it while I painted this. And then I watched a bunch of other movies from that time period. I watched The Labyrinth, and I watched the old Dungeons and Dragons. I forget what like the actual like the title of it is, but it's not the new one that came out recently. It's like the older one. It's super cheesy, but I love it anyway. um, there's just a certain nostalgic charm to, kind of like silly 80s fantasy type movies. And they're so heartwarming too. Like, The Dark Crystal is just, excuse me, it'll always hold a special place in my heart. So, the idea behind this painting, the colors were inspired by, you know, 80s and 90s fantasy art tends to be very, very colorful, like almost absurdly colorful. And I really wanted to go with that on this particular piece. I was like, you know what? This is just for me. This is just for fun. And if it turns out well enough to, make in a prints or something, then great. But that's not what I made this for. So um, I did a wash, as you saw in the beginning, with like rainbows. I just kind of did a little bit of, of a gradient into different colors of the rainbow. And I feel like, the end result was really fun. And I'm glad that I chose to make like this sort of like frame around it and had, some of the items kind of popping out of the frame. Part of the reason I did that was because this particular watercolor block, for whatever reason, I can never get the paper off without damaging the edges. This is, I think it's Canson, but it's hot press paper and it's in like a block, so it's glued on two sides. And I use a razor blade to try and very carefully cut this this watercolor block paper off. And for whatever reason, it just never wants to separate. I've never had this much trouble with any other watercolor block. I've used Arches, I've used Canson's hot press, or excuse me, cold press. This is the hot press. For whatever reason, this particular hot press watercolor block, I just cannot get the pages off. It drives me bonkers. So I wanted to design something that it didn't matter if I damaged the very, very edge of it because it was going to be removed anyway. But yeah, I think it also is just a fun composition. I've been trying to work on my composition skills because I think, that's probably one of my biggest struggles right now. Is like, okay, I'm getting better at certain skills and techniques, but my composition is just not always very balanced or very like pleasant to look at. So I've been trying to work on that. So originally when I was sketching this, I felt like it was kind of missing something because I didn't have those staffs in there to begin with. So those are like, one of them is like a Skeksis scepter or whatever, and the other is like the Mystics staff. And I thought it'd be really fun to incorporate those as sort of like, symbolizing the two halves. And then the reference photo was when Jen was rescued by Kira, and she, floated them down from the cliff when they were running away from like the what are they called, like those metal beetles or whatever. Yeah, so it's really gonna bug me. I can't remember what those are called, the weird things that were chasing them. But anyway, um I wanted to take some artistic liberties though to make it look more like they were floating, you know. In the movie, it's like there's only so much they could do with puppets, and honestly, they did a really, really amazing job with the puppetry in that movie. but I wanted them to look a little more alive and a little more, like there was movement in the picture. So I made their hair kind of flowing upwards. I made her dress flowing upwards to just kind of show, that she was floating downwards. And I love Fizzgig. He's like one of my favorite characters out of the whole movie. I think he's hilarious and I love him. And I wish that Fizzgig was a real creature so that I could have a Fizzgig. Um, so yeah, I really had fun painting this. It was a lot of fun. I did mostly watercolor and then I did like gouache on top. I used Himi gouache, and I think I've decided that Himi gouache is really like, I guess it's the only jelly gouache that I've used. But out of all the different types of gouache that I've used, including acrylic gouache and, um, like regular, like water soluble gouache, um, I feel like the Himi jelly gouache is my favorite so far. I just I just feel like it's pleasant to paint with. I don't have to, be super obsessive about keeping it wet because acrylic gouache, it just dries so fast. Um, I'm not a fast painter, like I don't know. I like to take my time and I feel like with acrylic paint and acrylic gouache, it just dries faster than I would like. So, I really like the Hemi gouache because it will reactivate a little bit and it will stay, you know, workable for a little bit longer so I can blend it. Um, so yeah, I used it for lining and I also used it like on the surface color for a lot of things to try and enhance it. Because the watercolors can only do so much as far as, you can layer it a lot, but there's certain colors that are kind of difficult to get a really good opaque coverage. So the gouache kind of, it's fun to, use watercolor for its transparency and then gouache for its opaqueness. Is that a word? Opacity? I don't know. I think opacity is technically the right way to say that. But like I like being able to mix those two elements, the translucence and the ability to get a really good, solid, opaque shading. Um, it just kind of creates more contrast. And sometimes I struggle with that in watercolor alone. That's not to say you can't achieve contrast in watercolor. You definitely can. There's incredible artists out there, but I'm still learning and I'm still experimenting. And for me personally, this seems to be a balance that's working for me right now. Um, so, yeah, I had a ton of fun painting this. It was comforting and pleasant and enjoyable. And I literally spent an entire day painting this, like literally the entire day. And I definitely could have done quote unquote more useful things, but I really needed that break. Art is kind of like meditation for me. I can just zone out and work on it and just not think about other things. And I really needed that when I painted this. So, yeah, kind of rambling at this point. Not really sure what else to say about this or about Inktober. I guess, this was kind of the point where I was really thinking, like, it's okay. It's okay that I didn't finish Inktober. And in the future, maybe I'll pick and choose a couple of days that, are particularly inspiring to me and share those. But I'm not going to set myself up like, this is my year. This is when I'm finally going to do Inktober. Because even if I achieve it, if I'm not enjoying that process, then what's the point? There is no point. Like, if I'm not enjoying it and I'm not learning anything from it, I'm not um, getting any sort of value from participating, then I don't need to be participating. And that's okay. You know, just because other artists love Inktober and do really, really well at it, some people, I'm sure they make it look easier than it really is. I think it probably takes a great deal of planning and, um, discipline. I'm sure it takes discipline. But for me, I just am not at a point in my life or my career that it's realistic. It's just too much pressure and I'm not enjoying it. So I'm going to do this type of stuff instead. I'm going to do what makes me happy and keep working on my skills and working on my techniques and just getting better at what I do and enjoying it while I do it. It's not to say that I don't ever do art that I don't enjoy. Like, there's certain things like, I am a firm believer that working on the things that you're the worst at is sometimes what you need to do. So what I mean by that is, I used to avoid hands. I hated drawing hands. I was terrible at them. You know, Obviously, the only way to get better at drawing hands is to draw hands over and over in different positions. So that's kind of my philosophy with other things that I struggle with. I still struggle with certain angles, certain gesture poses, certain types of objects. There's just certain things that I have weak points in. There's things that I have strong points in and things that I excel at, and there's obviously things that I don't excel at. One thing that I'd like to work on more is, folds and fabric, because I wasn't 100% happy with the folds and fabric of her dress. I think it turned out okay, and I think it you can tell what it is, but I feel like I could have done better. But it's a process, and I think it's one thing to work on things that I don't love in order to get better at them and to help me love them more. It's important, but at the same time, I also need to be able to enjoy the process. That's the whole point of art. That's the reason I started drawing when I was a kid. Wasn't to impress anybody else. It wasn't to be the best artist. It was just because I liked it, because it was fun. And it's always about striking a balance between what we need to work on in order to be an overall better artist, versus also remembering why we're an artist to begin with, and to stay true to that, and to allow ourselves to continue loving this, because I don't want it to become just another job. It's so much more special to me than that, and I want to continue loving art and producing art, and that feeling of just like, oh my God, I made this, I painted this, and I'm so proud of myself for it because I've come so far. And that's kind of how this piece was for me. I felt so proud, and I enjoyed it so much, and it's exactly what I needed at this time. So if any of you are looking for permission to not participate in Inktober, this is your sign that it is okay to not complete Inktober. October. You're going to complete October, I hope. Inktober, however, it's okay. If you don't make it through a whole challenge, that's all right. And just know that as a fellow artist, I want to be transparent and let you all know that I struggled with it and that it's okay. I think it's important for us to be real and be authentic. So, anyway, let me know in the comments how you feel about, you know, Inktober and Drawtober type challenges. I would love to see what you think about it and, you know, hear your thoughts on how you've managed to balance your time management with that. So, thank you so much for joining me. And I hope you have a wonderful Halloween because today, when I'm actually recording this, it is Halloween. I'm being boring and staying at home, doing nothing in particular except for packing. But that's okay. I'm gonna watch some scary movies while I sort some things and maybe make myself a nice cup of tea and just have a nice chill night. Um, I hope you are all well and I hope good things come to you. And I will talk to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.